Imagine waking up tomorrow to breaking news: Canada has officially joined the United States of America. The world would be stunned. From Vancouver to Montreal, the maple leaf flag is lowered, and in its place rises the Stars and Stripes. Suddenly, the second largest country on Earth by landmass becomes part of America. This isn't just another political story. It's an event that would shake the global order to its core. Think about it: a superpower that already dominates in military, finance, and culture would instantly gain control of Canada's vast natural resources, Arctic access, and some of the world's most strategic trade routes. Overnight, borders would vanish, currencies would merge, and nearly 40 million new citizens would join the American family. But what does that really mean? Not just for Canadians and Americans, but for the rest of the world. Would this create a stronger, unstoppable superpower, or trigger global tensions like never before? Today, we're going to break down exactly what could happen if Canada became part of America, and why the world might never look the same again. Introduction: the idea of Canada merging with the United States may sound like science fiction, but it's a scenario that has been whispered about for centuries. From early 19th century annexation debates to modern-day talks about defense, trade, and Arctic security, the U.S. and Canada have always shared more than just a border. They already cooperate closely in military defense through NORAD. They're each other's largest trading partners, and they share cultural similarities that make them feel more like neighbors than strangers. Still, a full merger would be unprecedented. Borders on the map would vanish, but the ripple effects would stretch across every aspect of society, from the price of gas to the balance of global power. Why does this matter now? Because we live in a time when competition among global powers is heating up. China, Russia, and others are pushing against Western dominance, while climate change and Arctic security are becoming more urgent every year. If the U.S. and Canada became one, the geopolitical playing field would tilt dramatically. So what would actually happen? Let's explore the 5 biggest ways this merger would change North America and the world. Number 15. The economic earthquake. When we think about the economic impact of Canada joining the United States, it's not just about adding trillions of dollars to America's GDP. It's about creating a single, unified economic powerhouse that would dominate global trade. Canada's Alberta oil sands alone hold some of the largest proven oil reserves outside the Middle East. Add that to America's energy production, and suddenly Washington could dictate global energy markets with unmatched leverage. OP and Russia, who use oil as a geopolitical weapon, would immediately feel that pressure. But oil is just the beginning. Canada is rich in timber, fresh water, and critical minerals like nickel, cobalt, and lithium, resources essential for everything from smartphones to electric vehicles. Integrating these into America's supply chain would give the U.S. dominance in industries that China and Europe are also racing to control. On top of that, Canada's vast farmland produces wheat, canola, and other crops that feed millions worldwide. The U.S. wouldn't just be feeding its own people. It would have the power to shape global food markets. Trade itself would transform. Today, the U.S. and Canada already exchange nearly $800 billion in goods and services annually. With no tariffs, no customs, and no border barriers, North America would function like one giant, integrated economic zone, larger than the European Union. For companies, that means lower costs and bigger markets. For ordinary people, it could mean cheaper goods, more jobs, and faster economic growth. Still, the transition would not be smooth. Canadian industries might fear being swallowed by larger American corporations. Banking, energy, and agriculture could all see major shakeups. And what happens to the Canadian dollar? Would it disappear overnight, forcing Canadians into the US dollar whether they like it or not? These are not small questions. One thing is certain: the merger would send shockwaves through the global economy. America would not just be the biggest player on the field, it would dominate entire sectors in a way the world hasn't seen before. Number 20. Military and strategic power. If Canada were to merge with the United States, the military consequences would be massive. America already spends more on defense than the next 10 countries combined. Adding Canada would expand U.S. control over the Arctic, a region quickly becoming one of the most important battlegrounds of the future. As ice melts due to climate change, new shipping routes like the Northwest Passage are opening. These shortcuts between Asia, Europe, and North America could revolutionize trade, and whoever controls them gains enormous leverage. Canada currently claims much of this territory. If Washington took over, the U.S. would have unrivaled influence over the future of Arctic trade. Russia, which sees the Arctic as its own backyard, would see this as a direct challenge and respond with military buildups. A new Cold War in the north could be the result. Air defense would also shift dramatically. Right now, the U.S. and Canada cooperate through NORAD, a joint aerospace defense command. But if Canada became America, there'd be no cooperation, just one system under one flag. This would extend U.S. missile defense deep into the Arctic, providing a stronger shield against Russian and Chinese threats. Naval power would grow as well. With Canada's Pacific and Atlantic ports fully under American control, the U.S. Navy would gain more strategic bases to project power globally. Vancouver, Halifax, and Arctic ports would allow the U.S. to maintain a year-round presence in regions it previously struggled to reach. The question is whether Canadians would accept the costs. Canada spends far less on defense than the U.S., and Canadian society generally views the military in a less aggressive light. Would Canadians tolerate a surge of military bases, higher defense spending, and American-style global interventions? That cultural difference could spark friction. Even with those challenges, a merger would produce the most powerful military superpower in history. The U.S. would not only dominate land, sea, and air, but also secure its control over the Arctic, creating a strategic advantage no rival could easily match. Number 3. Politics and governance. Merging two political systems is often harder than merging economies or militaries. Canada's parliamentary democracy, where the Prime Minister is chosen by Parliament, doesn't match America's presidential system with its strict separation of powers. Bringing them together would be a legal and political puzzle. Representation would be one of the first issues. Would Canada's provinces become U.S. states? If so, Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, and others would suddenly have senators and representatives in Washington, shifting the balance of Congress. Many of these provinces lean more progressive, which could give Democrats an advantage, though Alberta, with its oil-rich economy, might align more with Republicans. Over time, the U.S. political map would be redrawn in unpredictable ways. Policy clashes would be even bigger. Canadians are used to universal healthcare, stricter gun laws, and stronger climate policies. Americans, on the other hand, are deeply divided on those issues. Would Canadians accept privatized healthcare? Would Americans accept Canadian-style restrictions on guns? These questions would spark nationwide debates and could become some of the most divisive issues in modern history. Symbolically, Canada's ties to the British monarchy would also end. While largely ceremonial, the monarchy is still part of Canada's identity. Losing it would be a symbolic but emotional shift, erasing one of the country's last direct links to its history. Internationally, Canada's independent voice would vanish. For decades, Canada has been seen as a middle power, respected for diplomacy, peacekeeping, and compromise. That softer role would be replaced by America's louder, more assertive style. For some allies, that would be a loss. For others, it would mean a more unified North American front. In the end, governance would not be seamless. Combining two systems with different traditions and values would unleash conflicts that could take decades to resolve. Number 40. Cultural identity and national pride. Perhaps the hardest part of all would be identity. For many Canadians, being Canadian means being different from Americans. They're proud of their healthcare system, their multiculturalism, their global reputation for politeness and compromise. To suddenly erase that identity would not just be political, it would be deeply personal. Language is at the heart of this. Canada is officially bilingual, with English and French as national languages. In Quebec, French isn't just spoken, it's a way of life. Many Quebecers already feel tension within Canada, so becoming part of the U.S. could provoke even stronger resistance. Would America recognize French as an official language, or would it fade over time? Losing that cultural identity would be unthinkable for many Quebecers. Sports and entertainment would also change. Canadians rally around hockey as their national sport. Would the Stanley Cup suddenly feel like just another American trophy? On the flip side, merging Canadian and American entertainment industries could create a cultural giant. Hollywood and Toronto's film industry together could dominate global media, while Canadian music icons would be fully absorbed into the American brand. But identity is also about values. Canadians generally see themselves as more collectivist, emphasizing community and equality. Americans lean more individualistic, celebrating personal freedom and entrepreneurship. These values shape everything from laws to humor to daily life. Merging them would be messy, and not everyone would welcome the result. And then there's the flag. For over 150 years, Canadians have flown the red maple leaf as their symbol of independence. To lower it and replace it with the stars and stripes would not just be symbolic. It would feel like losing a part of their soul. Many Canadians would resist, even generations later. Borders can disappear on maps, but cultural identities live in people's hearts. That may be the hardest frontier to cross. Number 50. The global ripple effect. Finally, the world reaction. If Canada became part of America, it wouldn't just be a North American story. It would change the global order. For allies, NATO would be stronger than ever. Europe might welcome a bigger, more powerful America to balance against Russia and China. But at the same time, some Europeans would fear being overshadowed, worried that U.S. dominance leaves them with even less influence. China would likely react with alarm. Beijing has long invested in Canadian resources and trade deals. With Canada gone, China would lose an important partner and face a more unified rival. The U.S. would control even more oil, minerals, and farmland, resources China needs. That could fuel economic clashes, trade wars, or new global rivalries. Russia would feel the heat in the Arctic. Moscow has built military bases and icebreakers to secure northern shipping routes. A U.S.-Canada merger would put Washington firmly in control of much of the Arctic, threatening Russia's ambitions and escalating military competition. Smaller countries would feel the effects too. Many nations rely on Canadian aid and peacekeeping, trusting Canada's softer voice in diplomacy. That identity would vanish, replaced by America's more forceful style. Some would see this as stability, others as domination. Global institutions would also be reshaped. The United Nations, World Bank, and IMF already wrestle with U.S. influence. A bigger America would wield even greater voting power, resources, and sway, raising concerns about fairness. Some countries might push back, forming new blocs to balance against this superpower. In short, the ripple effect would touch every corner of the world. Some would welcome the stability of a stronger America. Others would fear a world where one country dominates too much. Conclusion: so what would happen if Canada became part of America? Economically, the U.S. would dominate global markets. Militarily, it would gain unmatched Arctic power and strategic reach. Politically, governance would be messy and divisive. Culturally, Canadians might feel their identity slipping away. And globally, the balance of power would tilt toward an even more dominant America, with allies and rivals alike scrambling to adjust. Would this be the dawn of a new golden age for North America, or the start of a dangerous new era of global rivalry? One thing is clear: if Canada ever became part of America, the world would never look the same again.